Hi, I'm Adam,
This is Kevin.
and we are Tech Guys Who Invest. This is the place for business people and investors to learn all about investing. We offer a fresh perspective on what it's like to have a day job while investing, and we share lessons learned on our investing journey. Our vision is to educate and entertain you while adding tons of value to your daily commute. Welcome to our show.
Adam, it's good to see you. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing awesome, Kevin. How are you?
Fantastic. I'm doing great as well. It's nice to come off of this cold that I had and feeling a little bit better.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you're feeling better. I had something too that kind of knocked me out, but
It's
I'm
weird,
back.
like this flu season, right?
Yeah, man. But we're back at it.
We are back at it. And speaking of getting after it, I know you were at a multifamily conference on one of our most recent guests, Gino with Jake and Gino. You can check that out on tgwipodcast.com/Gino-Barbaro.
Yeah, it was an awesome event. I really got a ton of value out of it. I loved it. I came back energized and ready to go.
And what was the number one takeaway that you got out of an event like this?
Yeah, I think the number one takeaway is the connections I met. You just meet so many valuable, interesting people who you will likely add value to in some way in the future, people you'll end up running into again and stay in touch with, people who will expand your network. So that was definitely the best part of it. And of course, I got a lot of good knowledge out of it as well. And overall, it's just a phenomenal event. I think these kind of events are so important to grow yourself.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is from my experience, and I'm also assuming this, that the people you met there were on the spectrum of experience, meaning there are people who have never done a multifamily deal, and there are people who have hundreds, maybe thousands of units, but they're all there continuing their education. Is that a fair assessment?
It's totally accurate. And I met some of each of those and everyone in the middle, which is great because they all add value to you and you can add value to them in different ways. It takes all kinds to work in this, in this area, to invest in multifamily in particular. It takes a team.
Absolutely. And so I think that the first thing that you should do as an investor, if you're listening to this, is establish your investor identity. And then when you figure out what that is, I think we have a great episode that talks about investor identity.
We do.
But once you figure out what that is, it's nice to go to these events because you'll learn so much. Your brain will basically be mush by the time you're done. You'll connect with so many awesome people, and you will attend this. Coming out of it, you'll be so invigorated and motivated to go and get after it.
Yeah. And this kind of leads into what we wanted to talk about today, Kevin, which is the importance of investing. Why it's so important.
I think that from my personal experience and what I've learned, that investing is the single greatest action you can take to achieve financial freedom, but also build wealth.
Yeah, that's what it means for me as well. And I know there are a lot of different goals for investing. People have different reasons why they invest. But I think most people at the end of the day, it is primarily wealth generation, wealth creation. And there's no better way, in my opinion, to do that than investing in real estate.
I agree. And I know you were talking about this earlier before we hit the record button, was that the idea of trading time for money and how investing kind of does the opposite, where if you put your money to work, that money never sleeps. It's going to continue working so that you can sleep, so that you can do other things.
Yeah, I've read a lot of books on wealth that say broke people or the poor and middle class think about trading their time for money. They think in terms of how much I make. Wealthy people don't think that way. They don't think that way. They think about a return on their investment.
And they think about how they can, it's almost like maximizing the results of their money with the minimum amount of effort. That's what I want to do when I invest.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, well said. I think that is how they think about it, and that's how I'm starting to think about it. I'm looking for ways I can make my money work hard for me and put as little of my time into it as possible while maximizing the the return my money makes for itself.
I agree. And when we talk about this is what we've gathered and what we've learned, what are some resources that opened your eyes to this idea of investing?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I've got quite a few. Tony Robbins, Money Master the Game.
That's a good book.
That book just opened my eyes. Of course, Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, they all kicked it off and helped me start to discover more. A little further along in my journey, I got a hold of Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins and read that. And that started to really open my eyes to the whole 401k and mutual fund world and how it's not what I thought it was.
Oh, absolutely. That same for me. That was an eye-opening experience because there are systems, or like the way the system is set up, from my understanding and from what I've read, it's basically set up so that they're going to get paid regardless of if they make you money or not.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. If it's for the ultra wealthy, the top 1% to continue to make uber millions. And unfortunately, it's at the expense of people's ignorance. And I was ignorant as well. I thought that was investing, to
Sure.
put my money into a 401k or into an IRA. And I admittedly didn't know much about what was going on behind the scenes. I was sold on this idea of compound interest working in the fund over years, and I'll have enough to retire. But reading those books and some others really opened my eyes to the fact that that is much riskier than educating yourself on an investment class. For example, multifamily real estate, notes, uh, public companies, private companies, but really educating yourself and investing intelligently based on that.
So that is what I think it boils down to. I can sit here and tell you till I'm blue why you should invest in real estate, but for some people, it's just not going to be what they want to do. And that's, you do what you think is best. And I will kind of, okay, we can agree to disagree for some things. But ultimately, if you are going to invest, do it intelligently. Read up on what it is you're going to do. If you're going to pick a target date fund, understand what that target date fund is. Look at the fund managers. And I'm speaking from experience. When I had a 401k, I just picked one and said, okay, yeah, I probably plan to retire around then. I'm going to select that one. That one looks good to me. The return that it says it's getting the last year or two sounds great. And then you set it and forget it. And I think it's unfortunate that, myself included, I didn't do any research. I had no idea what they were investing in, what the strategy is. None of that I took an initiative on. And it takes a lot of work to be intentional with your investing, but you can introduce some of that control and mitigate your risk by doing something like that.
Yeah, and it's so critical. I mean, it's about your future. What could be more important than your financial security, especially when you're too old to work? Or what happens if you lose your job? When you're trading time for money in a job, if something happens outside your control and you're no longer able to keep that job for whatever reason, it happens to you. But if
Yeah,
you've got money coming in from investments, then you're safe.
absolutely. The income, the cash flow, the streams of income generated from your investment is ultimately what you want to get, instead of, like we said, trading your time for money, which is how we were all raised to think about things, is that you work that amount of, the amount of hours you put in is how you're going to get paid. When investing, it's really not that at all. It's going to pay you regardless, assuming you invest wisely.
Yeah. And there's another book that I thought was really interesting called 401 Chaos by a guy named Andy Tanner. He's in Robert Kiyosaki's network. And I believe he was on Rich Dad podcast, but it was a fascinating read. And it really gets into the detail of a lot of the issues with 401ks. So if anyone is interested in diving deeper, I recommend that material. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, the Tony Robbins book, Money Master the Money Game. I can't remember the title of that book. We'll put it in the show notes as well.
Yep.
But it really dives into the 401k as well, and it we just ask you look at it from a different perspective. Be open to recognizing that you may have been fed, for all intents and purposes, a lie.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really kind of scary. So the thing to do rather than be paralyzed by fear, once you learn this, is to equip yourself to invest intelligently, educate yourself. And that's why we're doing this podcast. We're educating ourselves as we go and trying to bring those who listen along with us and educate them too.
And the most successful investors that I have spoken to, for whatever asset class they have, they can break down the reasoning at which and the reasons why, they're investing in that asset class. If I said, hey, I'm curious, why do you choose that? They'll go bam, 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 bam. They'll be able to talk to me and educate me on it. And ultimately, that's what I would want for whoever's listening to this. If you decide, hey, I'm going to invest in index funds. Okay, why? Be able to educate me so that you yourself are informed. Because if you can educate somebody else and they can understand what you're trying to convey, that means you yourself understand what it is you're actually trying to do.
Yeah, I think the one thing I want to communicate to people who are listening is don't just blindly put your money into a company plan like a 401k or an IRA and hope for the best. Educate yourself. Start to look at some things that you think you might be interested in and go all in, educate yourself, and take some action to intelligently invest for your financial future.
And you don't have to invest in a 401k, or you may not have to. You can ask your employer that if it's required. In my experience, it hasn't been required, so it's something that you should look into as well. If you can think of other ways that you can invest your money, by all means, you can do that. Just make sure that you're fully aware of all the other options.
Yeah, I think that's great.
All right, so stay educated. If you want to learn more, if you have any questions about what Adam and I are doing personally, reach out to us, techguyswhoinvest@gmail.com. So invest wisely and invest safely. Thanks, everybody.
That's it for this episode of Tech Guys Who Invest. This is Adam.
And this is Kevin. Thank you so much for listening to us. Don't forget to join our Facebook page where we're building a community of investors so that we can share ideas, tips, and other ways to help us get out of the rat race. If you found value in this podcast, it would mean the world to us if you could share it with your network. Lastly, we love feedback. It's how we get better. So if you wouldn't mind spending 30 seconds and leaving us an honest review on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever platform you're using, that would be super sweet. If you want to get on Adam or Kevin's calendar, go to tgwipodcast.com/contact. We want to help you invest safely, wisely, and ultimately get you out of the rat race. Thanks again.